Greetings and welcome to Chapter 2 of my story. I am Kaio and I hope you enjoy. Chapter 2: The Seeds of Fate. 8 years have passed since that day. 8 years for me and my friends to survive. Thanks to them, I was able to eat well again, since we all worked as a team to find food, defend each other, and stay together. But unfortunately, there was also enough time for our raid to blast through our already dying home. In the Warlands, it was as common as seeing trees, even though those were becoming less common by the month around here. In this world, there was nothing but chaos. Chaos, war, and conflict. And they all created a cycle of violence that would never be able to stop. Thanks to the raid, the village now looked no better than a makeshift refugee camp. Now, there are only tens of us. Raids were the bane of everything in this messed up excuse for a world. Settlements, towns, and some cities were almost constantly being put to the torch and sword. Screams in distant neighboring villages could be heard on cold, clear nights before the flames drowned them out. One time, perhaps a year or two ago, I was on the outskirts of my village and scanned the horizon in the dead of night, and I could see one or two flickering red lights in the distance. One of the villagers told me those used to be nearby towns. Now they were mass graves. In the Warlands, you either conquered or you got conquered. Here, there simply was no in-between. I told my friends, Jess and Drew, what I saw later that week, and we all made up our minds. We were going to make a change. We couldn't just let our village be swept away by some bandit clan or rotted away by famine and sickness. We had to at least try to save our home. Since that day, we have been training each other. We used sticks, pipes, broom handles, anything that could be used as a makeshift sword. We even trained with our fists as much as possible as well. With all this, we had a goal. Beyond our village was the capital of our kingdom. It was the grand city of Rubrin. There, the king lived, along with his wife and daughter. Together, they made up the royal family. And with other cities being massacred and burned, the king would send out small deployments to all the other remaining settlements. These squads would recruit new soldiers to be put into the ranks of the king's great army and defend the city of Rubrin. Our goal was to be one of those settlements the king would try to find. We were going to join the king's army, fight to defend the king and his city, and be rewarded with enough shill that we could finally rebuild our village and fortify it. We would then save our home. That hope would drive us to train harder. We walked back to our village's tavern to take a break from our training. Okay, when I say tavern, I really mean a place where all the hopeless villagers would drown their sorrows with the village's quickly dwindling alcohol supply. But it was a nice place to take shelter from the rain that now tormented the tavern's leaky roof. We found a seat far away from the other patrons and talked about our plan and what we would do when we met the king. We often heard whispers there that the king had discovered a threat to his home, and that's the real reason why he sent his men out. The bandits that have been plaguing the lands around us have been getting stronger, and were actually teaming up with one another under one banner. And they were going to openly attack the grand city of Rubrin. If they were powerful enough for the king himself to get this nervous, then we were more than ready. Or we were even more ready. We hated bandits more than anything. They were the reason our home was slowly becoming a pit of death and despair. Why our parents died. Why nobody but us had any courage or hope to try to do something about it. When I went to sleep that night, I had the strangest dream. I was standing in total blackness. I couldn't see anything. Then, a voice, coming from nowhere, yet everywhere, called out to me, "Kaio, the newest chosen, destined to either rule or die. May the rift guide your path." And that's when a light shone on me like a spotlight. My chest got heavy like it was packed with rocks, and it began to burn. I screamed, but had no voice. I yelled, but made no sound. And I felt like this strange feeling was being branded into my very spirit, my very willpower. I looked up, and I saw someone floating above me. But the bright light had only shown their figure, not their face. I heard the sound of a lightning strike, and everything went dark. The next morning, I woke up in my own house. It used to be my parents' house, but since they weren't using it anymore, I took it over. The bright morning sunlight had been shining through the cracked windows in front of my bed. I was sweating even though I wasn't hot. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't cold. I shook my head and tried to clear my mind, but my chest still felt like it was slightly burning. But when I looked, I was untouched. My heart was pounding. It felt so real, I almost thought I was actually there. But that was impossible. I got up and went to get dressed. I wore a gray shirt, stained and tattered, and brown pants that were caked with years of dirt and mud, along with shoes that looked just the same. I heard a knock at my door and almost jumped a mile. I almost fell down the stairs trying to run to my front door. Catching my breath, I opened the door to see my two best friends, Jess and Drew. Jess had long brown hair that was almost exclusively in a ponytail. Drew had pure black hair that was always cropped short. "Hey, he's awake. You owe my 5 shield, Drew." Jess grinned and held out her palm. Drew rolled his eyes and sighed. "Jess, he looks like a zombie. I'll barely call that awake. And besides, even if I had 5 shield, I would have spent it by now." Jess pouted and looked at the ground and mumbled, "Cheapskate." I chuckled and yawned. "I see you two are still getting along," I groggily replied and walked outside. To my left was a full barrel of fresh rainwater. Looking into it and seeing my reflection, I was kind of stunned. The last time I looked into my reflection was that day before I went to look for food 8 years ago. I was pale, scrawny, and my eyes were looking like empty sockets. But now, I had actually gained some weight. I had healthy-looking skin, and my eyes now were filled with a constant look of determination. My blonde hair was so unruly it looked like spikes were protruding from my head. But I kinda liked this look. It was completely different from the boy that almost died over a few pieces of bread. I put my hands into the cold water and splashed it on my face to wash it. I was almost instantly refreshed and fully awake. I used the collar of my shirt to dry my face when Drew tapped me slowly on the shoulder. I looked up, and I saw his face was focused, and instead of speaking, he pointed over to the main road entrance to our village. There were horses mounted by knights who were carrying banners. On those banners was a golden griffin on a sea of white. and under it was a strange rune. This was the emblem of the King of Rubren, and his knights had found us. The three of us were more or less stunned by the sight. Most of the other villagers were almost running into their houses, or even just away from the area, in fear that these knights were no better than the bandits we were so used to being attacked by. But these riders had no intention of invading our sad excuse for a town. No, they only wanted one thing: to recruit. It seems the rumors we heard were true, and that only meant our chance was here at last. Those who hadn't ran away were standing, crossed arms, and glares on their faces. To them, these really were no better than the raiders or bandits to them. One way or another, they were still taking their loved ones away. But me, Jess, and Drew knew better than that. We slowly walked closer to where the knights had stopped their horses. One knight had dropped down to the ground off his horse, pulled out a fancy parchment scroll, and read aloud. As humble knights of His Majesty King Nolan, ruler of the grand city of Rubren and her surrounding residences, hereby request that any and all able-bodied men and women stand up and present themselves. Those who are found to be up to standards shall be asked to join us to the grand capital, where they will have an audience with His Majesty the King himself. He rolled up his parchment again and tucked it away into the saddlebag of his horse, expecting to see several adults circling around him. The curious look on his face told me that he wasn't ready for only 3 people, much less 3 people who had not yet even reached adulthood. The 3 of us all gave him an excited smile. And that ends chapter 2. I hope you guys enjoy, or had enjoyed, rather, and tell me what you think. Do you like where this is going so far? Send me some feedback in the comments or something. I hope you guys liked it, and take care.